Ever imagine, like, packing your bags, grabbing your parka, and heading off to work at the bottom of the world? Antarctica. It's more than just ice and penguins, though, right? It's a hub for vital scientific research. But what happens when things down there start to, fall apart?
Literally fall apart.
Well, maybe not literally, but close. We're diving into a recent article, Crisis in Antarctica. Catchy title, right? It's claiming the Argentine government's putting their whole Antarctic operation at risk.
Ah, this is about their research program, right? With the budget cuts and all that.
Exactly. They're talking grounded flights, ancient equipment, the whole nine yards. But first things first, the article kicks off with this whole thing about research flights to the Marambio base being grounded. Now, for those of us who haven't circled the South Pole on a map lately, what exactly makes this Marambio base so important?
Well, think of it like this. You're a scientist, right? You've traveled thousands of miles to one of the most remote places on Earth. You need supplies, you need to communicate with the outside world, maybe even get a message back home every once in a while. That's where Marambio comes in. It's the logistical heart of Argentina's Antarctic operation.
Ah, so it's like the Grand Central Station of the South Pole.
Exactly. And right now, those trains aren't running on time. The article mentions grounded flights, some as a result of, get this, 50-year-old C-130 transport planes. And it's not just the planes. They're also dealing with ships that are pushing 30 years old. And to top it all off, they even had to divert some of their Mi-17 helicopters to support the ongoing situation in Ukraine.
Wow, talk about adding insult to injury. So it's not just about the research being impacted, it's the whole infrastructure supporting it that's crumbling.
Precisely. And this isn't some isolated incident. This is a symptom of a much larger problem. Funding, or rather the lack of it.
Right, because the article goes on to talk about how the new Milei government, with its focus on shrinking the government, is taking a, shall we say, thrifty approach to science funding.
It's a bit more complicated than just being thrifty. Sure, the Milei administration campaigned on reducing government spending, but the article highlights the concerns of the scientific community. They're arguing that this approach, while maybe good on paper, really undermines Argentina's long-term research goals and even their international reputation in the world of Antarctic research. To them, investing in science isn't just about throwing money around, it's a strategic move.
It's like saying, hey, we're serious players down here.
Exactly. And this is where things get even more interesting. The article goes on to connect these funding issues with Argentina's actual claim to a piece of Antarctica. You see, the whole continent is governed by the Antarctic Treaty, and a big part of that treaty emphasizes this, peaceful scientific collaboration. It's the foundation for claiming a seat at the table.
So, if you want to play in the snow, you got to contribute to the science fair.
Right. And what the article is suggesting is that by slashing funding, Argentina might actually be shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to their own position down there.
Whoa. So it's a geopolitical thing, too, not just about penguins and ice cores. This is getting serious. Speaking of penguins, though, there was this really concerning detail about emperor penguin research being put on hold. What's the big deal with that? Why should we care if we miss a sign or two of studying penguins?
Well, first of all, emperor penguins are like the poster child for climate change. They're super sensitive to any changes in the environment, especially when it comes to, warming temperatures and melting ice. So studying them is not just about the penguins themselves. It gives us this crucial insight into how the whole Antarctic ecosystem is being impacted and what that might mean for the rest of the planet.
Right. What happens in Antarctica doesn't stay in Antarctica. We're all connected, right? But back to the Milei government for a sec. The article mentions this push for smaller government, but are there any other reasons why they might be pulling back on science funding besides just wanting to save a buck?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. The article points out that while Milei ran on a platform of, fiscal conservatism and all that, it doesn't really offer any concrete alternatives being proposed by the government. So on one hand, you have the government saying we need to be fiscally responsible, and on the other, you have the scientific community saying, hold on, this is about more than just balancing the books. It's about our future down here.
It's like this clash of ideologies, right? You've got this focus on immediate financial concerns versus these long-term implications of scientific research. And caught in the middle is Antarctica itself.
And we're not even done yet. The article goes on to tie all the funding cuts, the aging equipment, everything back to the idea of Argentine sovereignty in Antarctica.
Right, because claiming a chunk of Antarctica isn't like planting a flag on a tropical island somewhere. It's a whole different ball game down there.
Exactly. So the question becomes, What does it actually mean to have sovereignty in Antarctica, especially with this whole international treaty thing going on?
Yeah.
And even more importantly, what happens to Argentina's claim if their scientific presence weakens?
Yeah, it's not like they're handing out property deeds down there.
Not quite. See, the Antarctic Treaty, the one signed back in '59, basically put everyone's claims on hold. It's like, hold your horses, folks. No need to start a land grab in the snow. The treaty's all about keeping things peaceful, making it a place for, science and international cooperation. Good vibes only.
So more like a giant international research lab than a free-for-all.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The more active you are down there, the more weight your claim carries. It's kind of like, imagine a giant science fair, right? The
Yeah.
country with the coolest experiments, the ones everyone's talking about, they get the most respect.
Right. It's like saying, see, we're not just here to stake a claim, we're actually doing the work. But if Argentina's program is struggling, couldn't other countries use that as an excuse to, muscle in?
That's a real concern the article brings up. If Argentina can't keep a strong presence, and remember, it's not just about military might, it's about scientific progress, logistical capabilities, the whole package. It could make other nations question how committed they are to the whole spirit of the treaty.
And it's not just about bragging rights to a patch of ice. We're talking about a place with tons of potential resources, right? Minerals, fresh water, stuff that's becoming more and more valuable every day.
Absolutely. Now, the treaty, as it stands, says no one can touch those resources, at least not for anything beyond research. But let's be real, treaties can be renegotiated, especially as the world changes. And if Argentina is not seen as a strong player, well, other countries might try to leverage that in future negotiations.
So it's this balancing act, right? They've got to deal with these budget issues right now, but also think about the long game, how it affects their place on the world stage and their potential control over some pretty valuable stuff.
Exactly. It's a tough situation all around, no easy answers. And on top of everything else, the article mentions this whole other thing. Argentina might be restructuring how they run their Antarctic operation.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't there something about switching which government department was in charge? What's the deal with that?
So up until now, the Argentine Foreign Ministry has been calling the shots down there, managing the bases, coordinating activities. It's always been viewed as a diplomatic thing, emphasizing the whole peaceful scientific purpose of being there.
Which makes sense given the whole vibe of the Antarctic Treaty. So what's changing?
Well, the article suggests they're thinking about handing the reins over to the Ministry of Defense, basically putting the military in charge of Argentina's Antarctic operations.
Wow, okay. That's a pretty big shift. Talk about sending a different message. It's not just peaceful scientists anymore. Why would they even consider that?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, the article doesn't really dig into the government's reasoning, but it does highlight the concerns this is raising, both within Argentina and internationally.
What kind of concerns?
Well, some people are worried it means they're putting military and strategic goals ahead of the science. Imagine, you're a scientist, you've dedicated your life to studying, say, glacial melt, and suddenly you're reporting to a general who's more interested in, I don't know, building fortifications.
Yeah, that'd make for some interesting staff meetings.
To be fair, the article does mention there are arguments in favor of the move, though it doesn't really say what those are.
I guess some people might say that with everything going on in the world, all the tension and uncertainty, it makes sense to have the military involved, even if it's just to protect the scientists and their work.
Right, that's a valid point. And it's not like the article says this restructuring will automatically be a disaster for research. It's more like it just highlights the uncertainty,
Yeah.
the possibility that priorities might shift. And understandably, that's got a lot of scientists on edge, especially on top of everything else they're dealing with.
So it's like we're seeing this, I don't know, perfect storm brewing down there. Old equipment, budget cuts, the government changing direction, and through it all, you've got these scientists just trying to, do their jobs.
It's definitely not an easy situation. But I think it's also important to remember what the Antarctic Treaty represents. It's a testament to how countries can actually work together, put aside their differences, all in the name of science and exploration.
It's a nice thought, right? Like a little glimmer of hope in a world that often feels kind of messed up.
Exactly. And while this article focuses on Argentina, they're not the only ones down there, right? You've got all these countries with research programs, and chances are a lot of them are dealing with some of these same issues. Budget cuts, political stuff, the urgency of understanding climate change.
So this isn't just an Argentina problem, it's a global one.
Exactly. And that's why it's even more important now for everyone to step up and reaffirm their commitment to what the Antarctic Treaty stands for. Keep science at the forefront, even when things get complicated on the world stage.
Because messing with science anywhere, it affects everyone, right? But this article, I gotta say, it doesn't paint the rosiest picture. Is there any good news here? Any reason to feel hopeful about the future of, well, Antarctica and everything being done there?
Well, the article itself doesn't really offer any magic solutions, but it does highlight the incredible work being done by the Argentine scientists and researchers. They're dealing with all this uncertainty, all these challenges, and they're still showing up every day dedicated to their work.
It's pretty inspiring, honestly. Makes you realize the kind of passion these people have for what they do.
It really does. And their dedication, I think, underscores just how important it is for all of us to pay attention to what's happening down there. The more people who understand the crucial role Antarctic research plays, the better the chance we have of seeing positive change.
So it's about keeping Antarctica and the science being done there on everyone's radar.
Exactly. And that's where we all come in, right?
Yeah.
As people, as citizens, we've got a role to play too. Stay informed, ask the tough questions, and let's make sure Antarctica stays a place where cool things can happen.
It's a good reminder that even with all the craziness in the world, knowledge and discovery, they should still matter. They should still be a priority.
Couldn't agree more. The future of Antarctica, maybe even the planet, it depends on it.
So, to everyone listening, next time you're bundled up, braving the cold, take a second and think about those scientists down in Antarctica doing the same thing. They're doing it for all of us, trying to understand this planet we call home. And remember, what happens down there, it affects us all. The future of Antarctica, it's not just up to the penguins, it's on all of us.